Hi, I'm Sam Fessich from the EduMagic Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the High Tech Podcast. You're joined by Josh. That is me. I'm one of the hosts. And Will. Will's here. Will is also a host.
Present.
Surprise. There we go. Everybody's accounted for.
Roll
doing
call.
Great. Based on our episode about attendance, we're doing awesome. Great. Hey, did you see? Smooth entry into the episode. I did not say hey or
There's
anything of that
wrong
nature.
With hey.
You know, I'm just
now that
saying.
you've said it,
I brought attention to it, but I felt like I needed some recognition for not doing it. But now I did it, so I kind of undercut what I did. So that's anyway. Welcome to the High Tech Podcast. Super pumped to get into some good old conversations about educational technology, maybe some nerd stuff. You know, wherever the moment leads us.
Pretty sure this is all nerd stuff. Certified nerd.
I can guarantee you we will not be talking about cooking. I don't think. Maybe. Don't do it. Don't you start a conversation about cooking after I say, anyway, hey, we're jumping in. We are excited for this week and what we're going to be talking about. Before we do our normal little thing, if you just joined us for the first time because somebody shared this podcast with you, and thank you to them if they did, or if you're just like, I searched high tech on Google and I was looking for good technology and I found you guys, well, welcome.
Sorry you're here, but
sorry you're here. But a couple things, just a reminder that we are not just weird voices in a box that you listen to. We also exist online, and you can find us at Twitter. We do the social media, and by that I mean Will does it. Remember to hit us up at High Tech Podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, and give us whatever we do there. Like us, retweet us, do some fun things, engage with us. We want to know you're alive.
Things.
We want to know there's other people in the world who care about educational technology. You can also contact us by email if you really want to hit us up. You have an idea for an episode, or you want to share a picture of an animal that I may ask for in a second. You can do that at inbox@hightechpod.us.
US.
And then you can also find us online at our website. We have one of those, hightechpod.us. We always do fun episode pages with stuff about our tools, or if we don't recommend a tool, we tell you why, and then send you to other tools that we've recommended. We do that now. We did that once. Yeah, this is a good old time.
Almost twice, but definitely once.
Twice, but definitely a solid once. So you can check us out on our website as well. We would be happy. I was gonna say to connect with you there, but there's no connecting. You can find us.
It'll send you to all the things you can connect with us.
Yeah, exactly. It'll send you to the things I just told you about, but in a less annoying way. So you can hit us up at our website there. And also, if you're gonna hit us up on Twitter or the email, we're gonna ask for our wonderful picture of an animal this week. And the animal this week is going to be, I didn't think about it ahead of time. I'm gonna be honest. I did not give this a lot of thought, but I think I got it. Okay. It's based off a conversation today. I'd like you to send me a picture of a pig chasing sheep. Okay.
What?
There was a thing today where we were talking about like a pig that was a sheepdog, but not a sheepdog. It was a pig, apparently. It was a whole thing, you know. Okay. And so I want to see if they exist in the rest of the world. So that's what I'm asking.
A TikTok thing or something.
It was not who do you think I am? I don't TikTok.
I mean, it was a conversation with somebody, so I figured they had the TikTok.
True. They maybe found it on TikTok. I don't think they did. I think they saw it in real life. I think. This is a real thing. Okay. I don't know for sure. Who knows? But I'm asking for the picture now. So there you go. That's it. That's what we'd like sent to us.
You know, that idea, Josh, and that very concept of a picture, it's not very accessible.
It's not. You're right.
It's not very easy for people without sight to understand or see.
It's true.
And that's why
you're saying some profound things right now.
Our episode today is on accessibility.
Exactly.
I think that there's no one media that's actually truly accessible, because even our podcast, this media form, would not be accessible to someone who can't hear. We do not have transcripts.
True.
Ooh, that's bad. We do
Yeah.
not have scripts. That's a fact. Everyone
That's
knows
also
there's no
worse, yeah.
script to the high-tech
No,
podcast.
I know one medium that is fully accessible. Okay, just work with me.
Mhm.
Wind.
Oh,
Wind is fully accessible. You can
Dang.
feel it. You can hear it.
No. Some people can't feel.
Okay.
Sorry, we don't need to make light of disabilities.
Yes.
Forgive us if that's what
Yes,
you're
that was
assuming.
not what that was.
That's
We were
not
coming
where we're
off that
trying
way
to go
for a
with
hot
this.
second. Sorry, I thought I was going to be profound. That was all that was about to happen. I was wrong.
Nice
Will
try.
prove me
That's a
wrong.
nice try.
This, if anything, what this proves is this is actually a serious topic, and it's a hard thing to deal with. Like, so let's just, I think the reason Will and I wanted to talk about it is because when it comes to accessibility, we talk a lot about it in education because we're thankfully a lot of people pursuing it more often now. But it's a difficult thing to do, especially when we're talking about like making online courses or like digital content for courses. The endless things that need to happen to really truly make something like completely accessible is very difficult. And then I would also probably agree with you, Will, that even in our best efforts, we never make anything truly completely accessible. Like it is difficult in the medium that we work in.
At some step, it's always impossible. There's always something that is just not going to meet all audiences. We'll set some definitions, though. If you're not familiar with the concept, I'm surprised. But since we try to be accessible, at least at a content level, to as many people as possible, accessibility is the generic term for making content available or accessible to people with diverse needs. That can be because someone is blind. That can be because someone is deaf. It can actually just be neurodivergence too, right? So we can think about folks who have different language capabilities, language functionality, people who have dyslexia, people who have a second language, and so it might just be harder to read in English or something to that effect, right? These are all issues of accessibility. Accessibility as a genre, as a function, was brought up, thankfully, by Section 504 and the Americans for Disability Act. It's not just narrow to disabilities anymore, which I think is a good thing. It's broader and more encompassing to say we're trying to make all of our learning content, all of our learning platforms as accessible as possible to our audience. I mean, if our goal is to teach and we want people to learn, we want to remove all barriers in that process.
Yeah.
So that's I think that's the, the basic things that we need to know here. That's the, Section 504, ADA, those are American, those are US laws and functions, but this is pretty popular international now too. I'm not familiar with like the terms in the international market, but I think almost everyone in higher ed's probably dealt with this at some point. I'm not seeing a big thrust for this in corporate, which is interesting. I think that there are spaces where it's popular, but I know in higher education, conferences,
absolutely,
books, classes, even stuff on campus, that it's always a part of the conversation.
And I would say higher ed is a little behind in this space than what K-12 has tried to do over the last little while. And that's also because of just the different dynamic of what K-12 has to deal with. In higher ed, it's definitely like, even in my institution, there's not like, we're a smaller institution and we have a handful of students, obviously, for different things that need accessibility and accommodations. But it's not like a rampant, like every course type of situation is dealing with this. And I think and Will, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I think what may be helpful is for people thinking about this, like if you're an educator, you're somebody working on creating your course, or you're designing a course and you're doing an online hybrid model type of thing. It's like, for me, I think there's two different levels of accessibility, like at a broad level of what you're dealing with. There's either what we often will call like accommodation accessibility, I think, which is this idea of like, we don't make all the content immediately accessible, but when we know a student has a need, we go out of our way to accommodate that need in whatever way we can. Okay. And then there's another movement, which I think is really being pushed, which is like, okay, we should be working though to make kind of a baseline of accessibility in our content. Like all of our content should be as accessible as possible, so that we can kind of create a better environment that's easier for people to get into, and we don't have to. I think kind of this idea of like not to like create barriers that people have to overcome, and I think that's kind of the dynamic that they're trying to get to.
I like what you're setting up there, though, and I think how that plays out practically. Accessibility could be possible by a certain date in the future. Like we could say all content would be accessible by a certain date in the future if we set the standards of what those things of accessibility are. And then moving forwards, anything created brand new was made quote unquote accessible, while at the same time anything that exists is brought up to code, right? Like this is kind of the issue. Even if you think about it actually in homes, right? In houses, the buildings that are out there in the world, building code changes almost every year, but there's definitely like big publishing, big things that happen to buildings every 5-10 years or whatever. And we know that, very stereotypically in the United States, at least, all electricity started with knob and tube wiring. And now modern technology, modern electrical wiring is very different, and the whole system's different. And if you put something into a new house, it has to be up to the current code, right? That's a pretty good system. And the retroactive part to that system is that if you're doing work on a house and it's being licensed and you've got, the right permits and stuff like that, if knob and tube is visibly seen while doing work on the house, it must be removed.
Yeah.
So if you want to do permitted reconstruction and work on your house, you've got to remove the old knob and tube, and it has to go in with the new stuff. So there are still houses that have never been worked on, like my neighbors, that have knob and tube in the entire house, and it's still just working. That's great. But then there's houses like mine that was redone. It's attached to my neighbors, right? So it was knob and tube originally, and all of the knob and tube is gone, except when you pull up certain floorboards in certain places and you find that it's still there. This is actually a pretty good metaphor and or parallel to accessibility, right? Like there are plenty of courses that just are running still today, even though they shouldn't, and they're running with knob and tube. They have inaccessible content. There's no transcripts. Everything's pictures, and there's no alt text on the pictures. There's no narrative text that describes the picture. Like these are the things that are happening that make our courses inaccessible. And unfortunately, buildings do have codes, and it's really just comes down to people who cheat the codes and the standards that don't get changes, right? You either never touch the house at all, and so it stays with knob and tube, or somebody cuts a corner and hides some knob and tube somewhere, and that's fine. But if you built a brand new house today, it has to have the modern tech. And that's what we kind of need in higher education. We don't have that standard. We want to. I think that'd be great. If I know semesters where there was a blind student who's coming to take an engineering class. They had to redo the entire course.
Yeah.
The entire course. I mean, engineering is diagrams and images and videos and hands-on activities, right? And this blind student was supposed to and was able and should be encouraged and supported to take that course. They want to learn this concept. And yet they couldn't. None of the content was there. And I mean, people were working 60 and 70-hour weeks to try and convert content so that this student could take the course. So, if we just built it in the first place the right way, might have taken a little bit more time, but it wouldn't have been double or maybe triple the time that ended up being when it came time to convert it after the fact.
Yeah. And I think it's like before we get too hard on what we, how we do it, what we do, it's a difficulty of like when it comes to making courses accessible. I think it's a difficulty of building the courses, working through them, how you're doing it, who's doing it, like what the infrastructure is for supporting. Like if you're just, a prof building your course, there's a lot of stuff to accessibility that I'm just to be honest, it's very difficult to get all in place and do the right way, that you're just not going to get there.
There's a lot of tech that's involved
support.
in each step.
Yeah, there's got to be tech and support. Like in our online courses, there's a lot of work to make things even better accessible, and to do those different pieces. That said, I think where we fall short in these conversations, and I'll use past examples as this. How I usually experience accessibility, maybe it's just me, Will, is there's always somebody who gets really into accessibility, Okay, that's like they want to do accessibility. And then we make a giant list of everything possible that needs to be fixed for accessibility. And then nothing happens because we get this giant list of
9
what to
out of
do.
10 times.
9 times out of 10 times, we get this giant list of what to do, and then it doesn't happen because nobody has time to go through and do every single one of those things. And even for building new courses, I think that could what happen, because to really like build that up, like you need to have a new plan for how you put stuff together and what you do and make certain choices about things. So if I could get to anything in this episode, it'd be my encouragement of this. I think if we really want to get to better accessibility, we need to pick the kind of the most important things to start with. Like if you're starting to get into accessibility, you don't have an infrastructure, or you don't have a bunch of people to work 60 or 70 hour weeks, although that shouldn't, my healthy
We shouldn't be
workload
doing that in the first
dynamic
place.
shouldn't even be happening in the first place. I know the student needs to get learning, but there probably were some alternatives we could have worked through that wouldn't have required 60 to 70 hour works. But if you really want to get into it, I think it's picking important things, small steps towards accessibility, making sure that when you're making new stuff, you're automatically taking those small steps, and then finding ways that you can put those small things into past stuff. And then when you've gotten those small steps done, picking another level of small steps to start doing. Like, I think the problem is a lot of us try to tackle this all at once. Like, we're all like, we're just going to be accessible by it's 2022. That's the year we're in. And by 2023 January, we're going to be fully accessible. So like, and that's my point. I'm speaking as much to myself. So I think maybe what would be helpful for us, Will, is to talk through what are some of the I like to think of things like this. I forget what it's called, but it's like this project management matrix, right? So you draw these 2 lines, okay? Bottom line is like difficulty level, low, high. Top line is like payoff or impact, right? Top line. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Line that goes up and down. There we go. Vertical
line. Vertical line, horizontal line. Yep. It's a quadrant, 4 squares.
It's a quadrant, yeah. And you create 4 squares, and you throw a ball around. No, I'm just joking. You do 4 squares, and you kind of just think through stuff, okay? If something is pretty easy to do and has high impact, that's an immediate win. We want to go try to do that. So I think what I want to try to think through is, what are some of kind of the immediate win accessibility things everybody could start doing to make their courses and digital, especially I think digital content, more accessible. Does that make sense where I'm taking it?
Yeah, and I think the quadrant thing is called the Eisenhower matrix.
Yeah. See, that sounded smarter. Yeah, it's fine.
No, I love this. I think that this is one of those things too that like it's kind of, we've talked about small teaching and James Lang's work before. It's kind of how do you change your classroom one thing at a time. Yeah. I think it's really easy if you were to commit to making sure that all of your documents in your course were screen readable. And what does that mean? Screen readers are software that read text out loud. That's it. So if you want something to be screen readable, it has to be actual text. That's the issue. If you put a picture or a PDF sometimes, or certain scans, right? Those things are not text. They're images. They're images of text, but the computer doesn't know it's text. So one of the first things you need to do there is like, I mean, hey, if you just typed up every word, every piece of content that's in your course, you're fine. If it was on a Word document or just on, your learning management system's webpage, boom, you are screen readable. But since most of us are not doing that, most of us do pull from textbooks, do have quotes, do have, articles, scientific and research and scholarly articles, right? Anything that's that way, anything that's in those formats needs to be what's called optical character recognition. It has to go through an OCR software. And when you put something through OCR, what it does is it does its best with computer, machine learning to read the thing for you and pretty much type a script up. It looks like the script is over top of the image. It kind of looks like nothing happened, nothing changed. But when it does this OCR, optical character recognition, the document is now readable by a screen reader. this is pretty straightforward. And actually, there's some software out there that even faculty you could just get, run their thing through it, print it out, and you put it in your learning management system. So that's an easy thing.
Yep. Can I make a small plug of how easy it really is? There's
Get
a
it. Do
tool.
it.
There's a tool we've talked about before on this podcast
Dun, dun,
called
dun.
Perusal. Okay, we've even had friends from Perusal come on and talk on this podcast. One of the bombs he dropped for us on his episode that is now realized, it's a thing, I've seen it there, is that
Love it.
Perusal can auto OCR documents and PDFs for you. Okay, so if you're like, I don't even know where to start, go check out Perusal. Okay, that's a free tool that you can utilize to do that. And
Right.
it's really great. I mean, there's lots of other standard tools. I mean, we have Adobe Acrobat for that stuff, and we have like Adobe stuff, but we pay for that as an institution to get that happening. So like that's what I love about Perusal. They're really committed to accessibility. So that's one thing they've tried to do is provide tools that can also help you as a faculty.
And that makes it easier, right? If you just
Yeah.
pop it in there, boom, OCR.
Do it for
You've
you.
just checked one thing off the list.
Mhm.
The problem is that those softwares are not perfect. And
Yes.
so sometimes if the scan or the picture was bad, or if it bends in certain places, it can't get a word. And suddenly, the person's reading it and it just, the screen reader is reading it to the person and it just misses a word or misses a whole line or, things like that. So to be truly accessible, those things after being OCR'd need to be checked as well.
Yes.
And that's the tough part. It's like, all right, so I've done it. That's great. It's a good step. It is going to help. It's not going to be a bad thing if you've done that. But if you don't take a moment, just like scan it a little bit even and just make sure that it's pretty good, your student could get it and it'd still be useless. And then it's almost worse because now they've made the time and effort to listen to it and it's not listenable.
Yeah.
So,
but I would say this again, small steps. Step one, start doing OCR stuff. If you're not like a team like Will and I have been on where like this is your job, you're just a faculty member, do what you're doing. Just try it. Get a tool that you can do to make sure at least you take a step towards making more of your documents and things accessible. Because I know tons of people are just scanning books and doing things and PDFs and images of things, right? Like if you could just take that step, you're already a step ahead of doing those things. That's my point. I think the accessibility dynamic that we always have to put ourselves on if we want to get better is we're not going to get better until we start taking a step forward in doing it. So like, because I've seen people have gone, well, I'm not going to OCR because I don't have time to look over everything. It's like, well, yeah, but I mean, you can still get like one step closer to being
you
better.
can still just OCR it and then you're that much
maybe
closer.
Maybe I'm more of an overly practical person because I'd also say, well, there's plenty of other things people without accessibility needs in those situations, then things don't go right. So you're at least putting them on a better playing field than what they originally were. And so I think like that's a step in the right spot.
We're speaking to accessibility and we're speaking to those folks who need something to accomplish their work. But one of the elements that I think is important about accessibility, and it's a part of the broader theory of universal design for learning, is if you've done this for your folks who cannot see, you still are helping your folks who can see. If it's OCR'd, that means it's searchable. And your students can go back over the document and search it for keywords and things that they wanted to study deeper. Like that's a good thing for everyone. It's not just someone who can't read.
Copy, like if they're needing to use
copy
the
and
resources
pasting.
You have, like copy and pasting is easier. It's easier to read as well. Like you're gonna get an easier read, for sure.
So like boom, boom, boom. Here's another one that I like, and this is I can't say that this is the way to do it. There's going to be some exceptions. Whatever, take this with a grain of salt, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Any video content should have subtitles. Not only should it have subtitles, but there could and should be a separate transcript, right? So while the video plays, there should be subtitles that can be read, but there should also be a separate transcript. So if somebody can't read, like they can't see, they could put that transcript into a screen reader and the screen reader could read it to them, right? Like there's things that are important about all these different steps. YouTube has a free automatic captioning functionality in it. This is another one of those ones where if you're doing your own instructional video content, put it on YouTube. You can, make it private and make a private channel and do whatever you want there for your privacy, or you don't want to put like, whatever content out there if you're concerned about that. But if you upload it to YouTube, you hit auto transcribe or auto captions, it will create a caption file for them. And again, you're one step closer to being accessible. And that's free. There are ones out there you have to pay a lot of money to have them captioned and stuff like that. And that's no fun.
And that's an example, again, just like other examples of auto OCRing. That's not perfect. YouTube's caption tool definitely screws some things up. I really like when we get like philosophical or theological terms or like things that. And it's like, oh yeah, that has no idea what to do with that word. But you're closer in those points. And I would say this, talk to your institution as well. If you have some kind of video management tool at the institution, I'm going to bet money that it has some kind of captioning tool embedded in it in some way. We do. We have one that has a captioning tool. Canvas's Studio that we adopted as our video management tool has a caption tool. It's not perfect.
I previously used Kaltura, which did that.
Yeah. If you're even looking for an outside tool, I'll do a plug too. This one does cost money, but it's fairly cheap. Rev.com is a great resource. We've used them before.
Right?
Yeah.
REV, Richard, E, Energy, V, Victor.
Yeah. What they do is you can upload videos, and it's pretty cheap. I mean, we've captioned like 20 videos before for like, I want to say it was like anywhere between 20 to $40. Like it wasn't too bad, if I remember correctly.
That's really cheap.
And theirs, unlike a machine caption tool, will be 100% accurate and will provide you a transcription. They auto caption it and then have a whole army of people who edit the captions. They'll send you the captions in multiple file formats on the video, and then you can use that to upload into a YouTube or whatever tool you're using. It's pretty simple to use. We've been really big fans of them. They've been a really good resource to use. They even auto connect with Vimeo. Fun fact: if you're using Vimeo, they'll upload your captions directly into your Vimeo video without you having to do anything, which is pretty cool.
That's sweet.
So, anyway.
Well, so I like these practical examples, and I think these are definitely things you can do. I want to paint a little bit of a picture of like the hard part. I think this is still worth folks knowing about and thinking about, right? I've supported, instructors where, they were trying to help a blind student take an engineering class. At the end of the day, images can be the hardest thing to make accessible. Yeah. Most images you're supposed to just put alt text on it, and alt text should be like a 1-line, maybe 2-line description of what's happening in the picture. So if you've got a picture of a dad throwing a ball to a child, okay, you can say, in a park, a dad is throwing a ball to a child. You might say a basketball or a football specific, but like, okay, easy. If the ball itself is not specifically relevant, you just say dad throwing ball to child. But if the image is a diagram of a tank, and if the student is supposed to understand that diagram, or there's specific elements of the diagram they're supposed to know, you have to make a text description of that. And that's not going to be a 1-line thing. You have to make it explicit why the information that's visually represented is informative, what it's teaching the student. You can't just say like tank diagram with the letters A through Z pointing to different parts on the tank. If the letters A through Z are pointing to 26 different parts on a tank that the student needs to learn, you need to have that list of 26 parts available to the student.
So let me give a practical example. This exact example of what you're talking about. We were doing an orientation course, and we were doing a training on Canvas, and we decided, because of wanting to do good learning, design and decisions, that we were going to have like this knowledge check quiz at each section. And what we wanted to do was, in the knowledge check quiz, instead of just like asking them questions about Canvas, we wanted an image with numbers on pieces, and they had to choose, like, we basically say, if you had to do this task, like find your grades, which number would you click on to start doing that, right? So a quiz like this. Now, the problem we ran into is the tool we were using, as much as I love Articulate Rise, they don't have a great like quiz tool for that, for like knowledge check quizzes. And so we were like, okay, we're going to have to just do an image with numbers. Well, this exact problem came up. We need to do alt text. Well, what alt text do you do? So we ended up having to make the decision of, Luckily, it was not 1 through 26. It was like 1 through 6. And our
Still a
team
lot.
it's still a lot. And our team made that decision of 1, inbox, 2, this. And we made sure, looking at pretty policy, a lot recommend a colon or comma type of situation to break up your options. So that way, because you got to remember what alt text does is for a screen reader. Okay, it's going to read that text. It's going to read that text for them. So whatever is being read out loud, if it just says options 1 through 6 are Canvas features, well, that doesn't help them answer the quiz. Okay, 2 is the option, clearly.
Right.
So we had to make that decision, and it's tough. Sometimes you have to. I think where I find it tough is I feel like sometimes you get stuck in situations to make a decision. This would be the best thing visually and dynamic wise, learning design wise. But if I do this, I'm going to hit these problems accessibility wise. Right. And we're constantly having to weigh where do I make compromises in certain things, because it's never, this is to your point, nothing is ever going to be fully accessible. Right. As far as we pursue we're always going to have these difficulties.
There's 1% of the time where the acceptable accommodation is that a human works with the student to tell them or describe to them or write for them or do, you know what I mean? There's 1% of the time where another human is allowed to be involved to help accommodate someone's learning. 99% of the time, it has to be that they can get to the content themselves. And that means it has to be in a text or audio format that makes it available to them. And that's the hardest part, because we are actually in a moment in educational psychology, educational philosophy that says visual and pretty is good. And that's not exclusively true, right? Not everything that looks great is actually a good learning piece. And hey, here again is a universal design for learning principle. It's not just accessibility. Just because it's pretty doesn't mean any of your students are learning it.
Yeah.
Just
absolutely.
A nice diagram doesn't mean it's effective for anyone. Yeah. So it actually, I think accessibility is almost a moral or ethical check for us. We should stop and think, is this content effectively available to my students? Just doing that is, to me, an ethical or moral check. And then the next thing is, okay, pedagogically, is it actually effective to learn too? Is it available to learn? Okay, now is it effective to learn? I think that's why I've always loved accessibility as a topic, because it's really challenging. There's a lot of technical concerns. For me, I get nerdy. I'm like, all right, how are we going to make this work? How can I do this? I'm excited to fix the problem or find a solution, right? But then it still sets the stage for, but can we do this better? Is converting the content really the best thing to be done for this? Or could we make the content in a way that's altogether better for both the student who has an accessibility need and all the students altogether? Sorry. I love that. Yeah. I love that kind of problem that we can wrestle with in this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. I love it less, but it's fine. But that's
it
fine.
can be really frustrating to work with. It's a tough thing.
Yeah. So I would say this. Don't use, just principle to what you're talking about to come out of what we're talking about. Don't use images unless absolutely necessary for what you're doing. Although I will say this, there's a term in image called decorative image. Those are fine. If you're just doing an image to make the page look nicer and it's not educationally valuable, I've done that before. That's fine. Or I'll use images sometimes just to visually give distinction between a different page and another page to help people kind of anchor themselves in what they're in. They're not educationally valuable. It's okay. You can label that decorative image most of the time in the tool that you're using, and you're good. It's fine. The screen reader will skip over it. It's not a big deal. Yep. So those are fine. But anything where you're well, I could write this out, or I could do a really cool infographic. Okay, infographics are fine. But thinking about okay, how would somebody who can't visually see that, how are they gonna work with that?
Infographics are fine. If they're good.
Well, yes.
A lot of infographics suck. And the whole point of an infographic is it should have some kind of linear progression to it so that you can read the thing and understand what it's trying to communicate to you.
Yeah.
So many infographics I've seen faculty just make on their own time are pretty, but they suck. They don't actually it's just a sheet of facts.
Listen, I'm just going to assume that we've talked about it.
Okay,
we can do a different episode on infographics.
My bad.
Nothing wrong with that. Okay, that's fine. Or you can make some other decisions. We've, for instance, one of the things we'll do is we might make I think I remember we made a graphic for like what the breakup of a student's like course life was going to look like in an orientation.
Sure.
And what we decided to do was create the infographic. It wasn't an infographic. It was just a general graphic that kind of showed. And then the information about the graphic was text next to the image in a way. And then we tied that way. So like a screen reader could read the text and it'd be fine. Like you get all the correct information communicated to you in the same way. So we made like decisions like that that we were doing. Yeah. So that's fine. I would say roll with that. So avoid those. Avoid, this is my other small one I'm going to say. Avoid. Just avoid tables, please. Okay? just like, and I'm not talking dinner tables. Hey, I'm not talking coffee tables. I'm talking like Excel spreadsheet tables in your LMS.
Rows and columns, baby.
Like rows and columns. I know you love them. I know they organize information well sometimes. But just avoid them. They suck.
Making them accessible is really hard.
Not accessible. Like they are not. Wow. So like our team has made a rule. We don't do tables. We avoid tables altogether. The only time we'll do anything remotely as a table is we'll build like HTML tables that actually are accessible, that will work. But those are a pain in the butt. So don't even think about it. Don't, if you're not in the work that Will and I do, just
you practically have to code the entire thing.
Yeah. Like we've had to build HTML boxes that can be read by just avoid it. Okay.
Not fun.
Altogether. Not fun. Okay. Just say no to tables. That's my principle right now. Okay. So think about how you can organize information. I would say, and then the other thing, because we're going to get into screen reader. A lot of this comes back to screen reader stuff when we start talking about digital content. Although, when you're talking about those who are audio impaired, I think there's also the easy solution of just like transcript. Like you've got audio, you've got a video, make sure there's a transcript that's readable.
Yep.
Captions that's readable. Those can really go a long way. The only other, I think, like small step I would suggest, those things called headers and bullets and numbers. Okay. Do not create, for a lot of reasons, but for this reason specifically, don't create just giant blocks of text. Okay. Use headings to break up topics, to organize things, because that really helps screen readers. Anybody using a screen reader, if they have headings to work off of, it really helps like the screen reader read better and move around, but it also from an audio standpoint helps someone who's just listening to a screen reader really get the organization and structure of your content.
Headers are the street signs of screen readers, right? So if it's got a heading, the screen reader actually knows that and will stop and say section on or something, whatever the prompt is, but it's like header, and then it will read whatever your header is. And the person using the platform actually has the choice then to enter in and continue reading the content under that header, or they can skip to the next header. If you do not have a header on your page, the screen reader reads from the top left to the bottom right of the page. There's no stops, there's no breaks, there's no navigation. Your students will cry. Like I've listened to it. It's obnoxious if there's no headings on a screen read page. It doesn't stop. It just keeps going unless you hit stop on your device.
Yeah.
And if you're just in the middle of the page, you have no idea when to stop, right? Because when's the next content break? Where's the next header? Where should the next header be? So if you put those, it looks better visually, in my opinion, but it also is actual functionality for your students who have a visual disability.
I don't know about that. I hate headers personally. No, I'm just joking. Anyway, we went on about a lot of different pieces here. And there's a
This
lot more
is
we could talk about, honestly. I feel like we maybe should have planned an accessibility part 2. Maybe we should do that
right,
at some point.
right.
So
Well, and the thing to be said about all this though is like, we're not talking like multiplication and subtraction. We tried to break it down for you with a couple of easy things, OCR transcripts. That's like multiplication, subtraction. But then we start getting into some of this other stuff and giving you details on the screen readers themselves. That's like multiplication, division. Frankly, this is just calculus. Like the whole issue is so crazy that the equation you need to solve it is just ridiculous.
good,
like
good
that?
job. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
was just it's been a while since I've had a one like
I'm
that.
impressed.
That was inspired.
That was hold on. Transition. That's what just happened. Okay. That was
Our app this week is called Equatio. It is one letter short of equation.
Yeah.
Their website, I think, is equat.io. That was the old website. They have since been acquired or rolled into another platform that's called Text Help. So you can find them at texthelp.com. It's a Text Help product. But Equatio is an accessibility platform. I've used it a little bit in making content accessible at my last institution. I don't think Josh has had time to play with this one, but he's used similar tools. Like when it comes to making things accessible, you need the right tool. This is definitely a situation where you want a scalpel and not a butter knife or a sword, right? Get the right tool for the right job.
Swords are often the right tool for the right job. I would just like to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Just toss that out there.
Unless you're doing surgery. Surgery,
Well, it depends on what kind of surgery,
You want to disembowel them? Yeah, sure, then use the sword.
You need to get that leg off. The sword probably can handle it. That's all I'm saying.
It's going to be a lot faster. It is going to be faster.
Anyway.
Equatio is like a toolbar, an extension kind of thing. It can go into you can sign into the platform. You can get it on your browser. It's really, really useful. At a features functionality though, what it offers is it's both a content generator and like a transcriber translator, right? So you can go into Equatio and you can write brand new content from scratch that's accessible. Math equations, graphs, scientific calculators, LaTeX, which is like an engineering science coding language. There's some STEM tools that are in there. Like you can just generate that from scratch, and it's screen reader accessible. It's clean. It looks good. Like I have seen faculty who handwrite all their mathematics, and it can be hard to understand what they have written. So this is computer generated. Wonderful. Start here. This is the idea of what Josh and I were saying earlier. Like if you started building your content in Equatio, it's accessible. No problems. Nothing to worry about. However, they also have functionality to take existing content and, like I said, transcribe or translate it. So it's got like a screenshot reader. You can literally take a picture, a screenshot of something that's live, and it'll help translate that or transfer that from an image to text. It can recognize handwriting. So you could take your old handwritten notes and convert them to digital text. Speech input. Now okay, this is an accessibility tool. This is great. I'm just thinking to myself, who's going to like literally sit there and dictate calculus to a tool? Omega over is the sign of, I don't know, like, you can do it though.
Joke's on you. I'm doing it. Next math course we need, I'm going to just dictate what the SME gives us. I'm just going to be like 3 plus 45 equals
the square root of, really cool, really cool features that way. It's a fantastic platform. There is a pricing system available for like larger schools and institution-wide licenses and stuff like that. But they specifically have a free for teachers functionality, an option. I haven't signed up for this. I used to just use like a freemium version for the things I was doing. But I bet if you go through this process, they want like which school you're at, a little bit of information. But you should be able to get a free access to. Oh yeah, it looks like it might be just a trial or some sort of freemium network. But you can get access to the platform and use it. If you are in a team like Josh and I, or if you are dealing in this like this is you're an engineer and that's all your subject matter, having a license for this is going to be critical. Just having access to it nonstop will make your life so much easier, because they have like keyboards and stuff to type all the curriculum. It can take all your old notes and make them more effective, more visual now. It has a lot of the features that we've talked about back in the math whiteboard episode, which is awesome for visualization and content creation, but it's designed to make accessible content. That's what it's there to do. So I really like this one, and it's easy.
Yeah, I think give it a try. I installed the extension to use it. They have a Google Chrome extension that you can mess around with it. So I think it's definitely one of the situations that, like, if you just need to generate, especially for math courses, some accessible content, you could give the tool a try with the free version, see how it works. And if you're doing that a lot, then I would agree. You have a full team who has to do it. It's probably worth looking into a bigger license for it. But definitely a cool tool.
Yeah. It's as it goes by the usual high tech approach. There's nothing controversial about this one. It's not like some revolutionary classroom tool or engagement tool. This is just going to help you make your content accessible, existing content, new content.
It also does your laundry. So I hope that works. Yeah.
Right. I forgot that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shut up. Go home. Oh, wait. Just because we're here, Text Help, the parent platform, does have a bunch of other tools as well. So it's good now, even just getting in the front door with Equatio. There's other things about fluency, reading, writing, speech tools that could help you and your students be able to learn their content better and get barriers out of their way. That's the big thing here. This reduces barriers for students that are trying to learn this content. Now, this is maybe content specific, right? It's going to be science, math, engineering, things that are more technical in nature that you would need this for. I can't imagine someone who really would want this for like a literature course or a theology course. Just doesn't seem like that's going to be a fit. Yeah. But tanks, I could see you needing this for some tank courses.
Yeah, absolutely. Do that tank math.
Tank. One tank plus 2 infantry equal. No, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway.
So, folks, thank you for another episode. Thank you for joining us. This has been episode 66. Thankfully, no Jedi have been harmed in the making of this episode. Next week, for episode 67, we're going to be digging into a pretty fun conversation. I've been looking forward to this one. College. Is this about jobs or learning? Yeah. Okay, that's going to be the general conversation topic. Like, tune in. Is this about jobs and earning money or learning? And then we're going to look at LinkedIn as an educational platform, how you could actually use this tool to create authentic portfolios. Yeah. Weird idea.
Check it out next week.
Boom. Until then, find us on Twitter at High Tech Podcast. Like us, follow, retweet, post things, enjoy it. Connect with us by email at inbox@hightechpod.us. Or head to the website hightechpod.us, where you can find all of our resources, every single episode, even some episodes that don't have anything, like the one on Turn It In. And you can enjoy and share that with everybody out there in the world. Thank you again for joining us for another week of the High Tech Podcast as we continue to learn what it looks like to harness technology for all of our students in the classroom, whether they're online or in person. Until next time, see ya.
See ya.